Hey everyone. Today, I'm going to tackle a slightly different project. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, but I never quite decided to do it until now. The reason I finally went for it is that I found this juniper log in a man's garden. No, I didn't sneak into his garden at night with a chainsaw and take it. He sold it to me for a relatively fair amount of money. Most people buy their wood from stores or suppliers. For me, it's a bit more challenging since I usually work with whole logs, which aren't easy to come by. So, my wood supplier tends to be people's backyards and gardens. Whenever someone is renovating their garden or cutting down an old tree in their yard, I'm always lurking around, waiting. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the bark and clean the wood properly. Luckily, it's quite dry, so the bark comes off easily. The man told me he cut down the tree about 4 or 5 years ago, so the wood should be ready to work with. Even if the wood is completely dry, I like to put it in the kiln for a couple of days before I start working with it. This will dry it out further if there's any remaining moisture, but mainly I do it to eliminate any possible insects that might be inside. I'm going to cut slices that are about 9 centimeters thick. I often get asked why I use an electric chainsaw. There are several reasons. For me, precision is more important than power. What I'm after are clean, straight cuts, and the electric saw lets me achieve that. Another reason is that I work in a workshop with limited ventilation, and it's not very big. A gas-powered chainsaw, like a car, emits fumes that can be really dangerous in a space like that. I think I'm already dumb enough to risk breathing something that could damage my brain. But I have to admit, it sounds pretty awful. Can you imagine the guy from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre using one of these? To move forward, the first thing I need to do is completely flatten the base of each wood slice. To secure this type of piece to the workbench, I use these adjustable bench dog clamps. They've made the job a lot easier, especially when I need to flatten small pieces with the router sled. In my projects, I use the router sled a lot, and for some time now, I've been thinking about getting a new one. I've been looking at different options, but haven't made up my mind yet. There are quite a few models on the market with slightly different systems. There's also the option of building one myself. There are tons of videos on how to do it. So I'd love it if you could help me decide. If any of you have a router sled of any type, I'd really appreciate your recommendations in the comments. One of the great things about having a YouTube channel is that there's always someone willing to help. Now I'm removing the router bit marks with the sander. I need a perfectly smooth surface since I'm going to seal the cracks with tape. I'm realizing this isn't going to be an easy project. I have to repeat each step 15 times. Since I started working with epoxy, I've done a lot of testing, and I can say that the only tape that can really stop leaks is aluminum foil tape. It doesn't always get the job done, but it's definitely the one with the highest success rate. I'd feel a lot more at ease if I sealed the joints with silicone along with the tape, but I'm not doing it for 2 reasons. First, the gaps I'm filling are small, so if there's a leak, it won't be a big deal. And second, and honestly the main reason, I really don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to use deep pour epoxy. The gaps are pretty small, so regular epoxy will be enough. For those of you who have seen some of my videos, you might have noticed that I like to use charcoal to tint the epoxy. This prevents the wood from getting stained. Being a powder, it doesn't penetrate the wood fibers. So far, I've only used it for small pours. I haven't dared to try it on a large table with deep pour epoxy yet. I'm worried it might affect how the resin cures and end up wasting a lot of money. The good thing about not working with deep pour epoxy is that you don't have to wait too long. As long as it's not too cold or humid, the resin hardens in 24 hours and you can keep working. I've got 15 slices in total, and I've made a bet with myself. I think I'll have leaks in a maximum of 3. If it's 2 or less, it'll be a success. If it's more than 4, I'll have to rethink my method for next time. Let's see how it turned out. great. There was only one small leak, and it's so minor that I don't even need to fill the gap with more epoxy. I can still trust this tape to avoid leaks. I'm going to sand the epoxy on each piece so the base is completely flat and sits perfectly. So far, everything's going almost too well with this project. I hope it stays that way. All right, this definitely deserves a replay. Don't worry about me, I wasn't planning on having any more kids anyway. After a trip to the gas station to buy some ice and a couple of hours of sitting down, I can get back to work. Now I'm going to make the edges completely perpendicular to the base. It's not necessary to do it for the entire height of the piece. Creating a surface that's perpendicular to the base, up to 1/3 of the total thickness, will be enough. I'm doing this step because later I'll have to fit the pieces together and I'm going to need the edges to be parallel to each other. For the areas where I need to remove more wood, I'll use the bandsaw. But where the edges are already almost perpendicular, I'll just run it through the oscillating sander. When I first got this tool, I wasn't sure if I'd use it much, but it's actually become one of my favorite tools. It saves a ton of time and is super easy to use. Once I have all the slices ready, the next step is to fit them together. The idea is to preserve the natural shape of the wood as much as I can, fitting the pieces together based on their form and minimizing the cuts. Of course, it's much easier said than done. In my last video, I talked about how we should address the issue of having two different measurement systems. I joked that we should create a third measurement unit for everyone. Well, there's been quite an intense debate in the comments about it, and I've learned a ton of things. For example, NASA already works with the metric system, and a few years ago, they crashed a $125 million probe on Mars because someone forgot to make the conversion. Being pragmatic, the metric system is much simpler. 1 meter is 100 centimeters, and 1,000 meters is a kilometer. Really easy. But can someone tell me how many inches are in a mile? Another thing I found out is that the United Kingdom adopted the metric system in the mid-70s. I thought they'd been using it for a lot longer. This brings me to another thought. I know it's a sensitive topic, but guys from the United Kingdom, we need to talk. Now that I know you've managed to switch measurement systems, how about trying to drive on the right side like everyone else? Seriously, it feels great to leave your country, hop in a car, and not feel like you're going to crash at any moment. And yes, Australians, don't look the other way. This goes for you too. In similar projects I've done before, I usually make the puzzle by fitting the pieces together first, and then glue them all with epoxy, filling in any cracks and gaps between them. But this time, I'm not going to do it that way. I need to keep the pieces separate from each other, since I'll have to shape them one by one later on. Usually I would fill those triangular gaps between the slices with pieces of wood, but I think this time I'm going to leave them empty. Since I started working on this project, the wood has been reminding me of a smell I know but couldn't quite place. Well, today I finally figured it out. It's gin. My shop smells like a gin and tonic. And that's because gin is made from juniper. No, not from the wood. I licked it and it tastes terrible. It's made from the berries. Anyway, I think I'm going to sleep a lot better tonight. I finally figured out what that smell was. All right, I finally finished fitting all the pieces together. It wasn't easy, but I like how it's shaping up. Now I'm going to square off the edges and give the piece its final dimensions. Even though I won't get a perfectly clean cut, the only way to cut these pieces is with the bandsaw. I'll have to clean up the edges later. I want the pieces to only touch each other up to about 2 centimeters in height, so I'm going to tape them off to make sure I don't go too far when carving the wood. The idea is to shape each piece like a bubble, To do that, I'm going to use a high-quality carving disc that can handle all the work without any issues. I'm going to have to remove a ton of material, and wood carving makes a huge mess. Everything gets covered in a fine layer of wood dust that's really hard to clean. To keep my workshop from turning into a disaster, I'm going to hang these curtains to block the dust. Let's hope it works. I have to admit, I'm not an expert at wood carving with the angle grinder. I've done it a couple of times in the past, but nothing like what I'm about to try this time. We'll see if I get something close to what I have in my head or make a complete mess of it. If anyone has a better way to get this done, please let me know. I'm always open to hearing new ideas. "99% of the comments I get on my videos are positive, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Of course, there's a small percentage of people who leave nasty comments. I used to respond in a negative way, stooping to their level. Now I've decided it's not worth it, and just reply kindly. I try to apply this principle in my daily life too, responding to rudeness with kindness. Let me give you an example. The other day I was at a McDonald's drive-thru. I was taking forever to order through the intercom because the kids couldn't decide. So the driver behind me got mad and started honking and shouting at me. Instead of reacting, I decided to practice this new idea of being kind. When I pulled up to the payment window, I told the cashier to charge me for the car behind me too. When the guy went to pay and realized it, he started making grateful gestures and apologizing for his behavior. Then I got to the last window and picked up my order. Of course, I also grabbed his order and drove off. You should have seen the look on his face when he realized he had to turn around and wait in line all over again. Best $15 I've ever spent. Okay, looks like I'm done with the carving and it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with how it's turning out. Good thing I put up those curtains. This part of my workshop looks like a beach. But I also found out that some kind of animal paid me a visit last night. I'm guessing it's a mouse, but if there's any footprint expert watching this, maybe you could confirm it. I didn't find any tracks leading out, and I'd rather not grab one of my gloves and find a scorpion or something inside. The next step I'm going to take is to remove the marks left by the carving disc with the orbital sander. I'll try using 80 grit sanding discs. It's a bit of a tricky task since the center of this wood is a lot harder than the outer part. I have to be careful not to press too hard when sanding the lighter areas. The cracks filled with epoxy have a different hardness too, so I need to get an even surface even though I'm sanding areas with 3 different levels of hardness at the same time. I'm going to fill the holes and small cracks with black wood filler. I know wood filler isn't really appreciated in the woodworking world. It's often associated with quick, low-quality jobs. It's the easy, cheap fix, so to speak. I mostly agree with that, and I'm not a huge fan of using it either. But in this case, it's exactly what I need. This piece isn't going to be a table or any furniture that gets touched and has to withstand scratches and wear, so I can use it without any issues. It's easy and quick to apply, and it doesn't stain the wood, which is a big advantage with a soft wood like this. I'm going to keep sanding with finer grits. To do that, I'll use this soft pad to avoid leaving marks and flat spots. It's the best way to sand pieces of wood that aren't flat. It's even more important when you're working with a soft wood. I'm going to sand each piece with 120, 150, 180, and 240 grit. If you skip any steps, you might end up with sanding marks at the end, especially on the epoxy. I don't like sanding the wood with a grit finer than 240 before applying the finish, and I'll explain why I think it's not a good idea. Wood is made up of fibers that have small gaps between them. When we sand, we make those gaps smaller, and if we sand with too fine a grit, it creates a very fine dust that completely fills those little holes, which is why the wood feels so smooth to the touch. The problem is that when all those holes are filled, it creates a sort of protective layer that prevents the finish from penetrating properly into the wood, so it won't protect it as effectively. I'm going to mount all the pieces on a plywood base. So far, it looks great, don't you think? It's turning out even better than what I had in mind before I started. I'm going to draw the outline of each piece on the base, so I know exactly where they should be placed. Even though the wood is completely dry, and I don't think there will be any problems, I thought it would be a good idea to secure the cracks a bit more to prevent them from opening up over time. To do this, I'm going to drill a hole on each side of the crack and insert some dowels that will help me attach the slices to the base, while also preventing the cracks from getting any bigger. It's a variation on the bow tie inserts that I came up with, but it's based on the same principle. And of course, it's way simpler. I'm not about to do a bow tie insert on every single piece. I'd end up hating this project. It's already taking a lot more time than I planned. Which isn't really a surprise. It happens to me with almost every project I take on. It's something I need to work on. When I start planning something and think about the steps I'll take, I always think, this is a piece of cake. I'll get it done in no time. I guess I have a pretty high opinion of myself, but in reality, I'm not as fast as I think I am. But, in the end, reality always finds a way to put me in my place. Although I can't complain. It's taking a while, but everything is going well, and I'm getting closer to the moment I've been waiting for, applying the finish and seeing how it looks. I'm going to use hard wax oil. I'll apply with a white Scotch Brite pad to help it soak into the wood. But I'm realizing that it's probably not necessary. The wood is not very dense and is quite dry, so it's soaking up all the finish I'm putting on. If I want to achieve a nice finish, it's clear that I'm going to need to apply a few coats. So, for this first coat, I'm going to slather on a lot just with my hand to saturate the wood as much as possible, so that the next coat can start to sit on the surface. For this wall art, I'm going to build a black wooden frame. I'll make it a bit taller than the highest piece. It's a pretty simple build, so I won't go into too much detail about the process. First, I'll use the planer to get the pieces to the thickness I want. I cut the pieces to the necessary size, making 45-degree cuts for the joints. I also made a groove to fit the pieces into the plywood base. For some time now, I've been making a lot of wall art pieces. Some, like this one, I do because I came up with an idea that I think might look good and I feel like trying it out. But I'm also making some custom pieces for clients, people who have seen my previous work and asked me to create something similar for them. And now all that's left is to sand it down well. I'm going to spray paint it black. In my opinion, you can get a good result with spray paint, but with a couple of conditions. First, you need to use high-quality paint, and second, and this is just my personal opinion, it only looks good if it's matte. I really don't like the finish glossy spray paint gives to wood. The first coat of finish is dry now, and as you can see, the wood has absorbed it all and is completely matte. I'm going to sand it with 600 grit before applying the second coat. This way, the wood won't absorb as much, and the finish will start to stay on the surface. I'm getting really close to hitting 100,000 subscribers on the channel. When you reach that milestone, YouTube sends you a plaque to congratulate you. Let's be honest, I'd be pretty excited to get that. So, if you're enjoying the video, it'd be awesome if you could hit the subscribe button and help me reach it. And if by the time you're watching this, I've already made it, you can still subscribe. I'd be just as thrilled to hit 200,000. I ended up applying 4 coats of finish to get the shine I wanted. I could keep applying coats to make it shinier, but I want to achieve a natural finish. Too much shine would give it a somewhat synthetic look. Lastly, I'm going to attach the pieces to the base with screws. I'll also install a system to hang it on the wall. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks so much for sticking with me till the end. I'm going to put this wall art up for sale on my website. If you're interested, you can check the link in the video description to see if it's still available.